took me like 3 minutes to get there.
Oh, do you guys watch shows? Can I ask you that? Do you watch shows?
Yeah.
Do you watch Netflix?
Yeah.
Emily's no, I don't watch Netflix. Okay. So I'm sure you've at least seen the like thumbnail or whatever it is, like the graphic for the show called Monsters, about the Menendez brothers who killed their parents.
Yeah.
Okay. So I watched that show because my wife made me, and I really liked it, and she really liked it. So we've been talking about it a lot. However, they're really into Milli Vanilli, and I am now into Milli Vanilli like never before. And yeah, I've just been blasting it. So like as we're like coming on live right now, I'm like singing Blame It on the Rain to myself right now. You guys know what this is, right?
Rain.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah.
Gotta blame it on something. Emily, are you too young?
I think so.
I might be too young for Milli Vanilli. Jordan, you probably are too. I'm just an old soul, so I know about things that happened when I was like 2 that.
I was gonna say I'm almost the same age as you.
Mid-late 80s was Milli Vanilli, I think.
Yeah,
so
late 80s. Yeah, I would say late 80s. Yeah, so fun fact. Milli Vanilli was part of a large controversy around lip syncing. Do you know this situation? Okay. Hi, Sam. What up?
Hi, Sam.
So hi, Phil. They were caught lip syncing, but it was different than just because everyone lip syncs, like, right? But
when they're performing, right.
They didn't actually even sing their songs. Like someone else sang the songs, and then they were like dancers who like lip sync music. So anyway, that all came to a head at Lake Compounds, which is like 12 minutes from my childhood home. Like, yeah. So that's true story. What's up, Chris? Hi guys, nice to see people rolling in. So anyway, I'm like, so the Menendez brothers killed their parents, and then at the funeral played a really horrible Milli Vanilli song that people are realizing right now is a tremendous song. So I just called it a horrible song and a tremendous song at the same time.
It is a banger of a song.
You're familiar then. You know, have you been hearing it on social media? Because everyone's playing it everywhere. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I was a big MC Hammer guy, like growing up. So kind of same time period, late 80s.
Yeah.
When I was like 4. But
if you ask me though, I would tell you I hate 80s music. I'm sorry if anyone out there loves like hair bands or anything like that, but like I do. I think 90s music's better. I think 70s music is better. But
70s, really?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Over 80s. Okay.
Late 60s into the 70s, like the best rock ever. No? Am I wrong? Am I really wrong?
My wife would be greatly offended if you
listen.
About the 80s.
I'm sorry, she loves the 80s music?
She is an 80s fanatic. And now what they have this new thing called retro synthwave music, which is basically 80s in the 2020s. So it's like a revisitation of the 80s, and there's actually some really great bands. So a lot of like Casio style beats and background music to things.
Yeah, you think you know something? I don't know. It's interesting because this is like in sports, you have these debates, who's the greatest of all time, whatever. The whole point is nobody ever wins the debate. So when I say greatest rock music of all time, like there's always someone lined up to argue when we talk about different.
Yeah, I get that. I'm probably a early 2000s rock advocate personally, because that's
really okay.
That's kind of my that was like my peak, right? That was like high school, so it's like where the memories were made. So
you listen to Chris Leone's music? Is that what that is?
I love that kind of like screamo post-punk style stuff. That's kind of my jam. So
you know what? That's a good intro because Chris Leone's band did the music for our lead-in. Emily, are you ready?
Yes.
Our very outdated lead-in.
Okay. Yeah. Here we go.
Welcome to the Pondcast, the destination for insightful discussions and interviews on the appreciation, conservation, and husbandry of reptiles, with a focus on turtles and tortoises. Now, let's join our team of turtle nerds.
I did it.
You did
Nice
it.
job.
I think this is a good moment to say, as I finish sending my text message, because I'm a professional, and my phone's not muted. You know why? Because I just got a new phone and I didn't even know how to mute this. Okay. Kevin Minto helped me with that, our resident phone. Welcome to the Pondcast, everybody. Episode 115. Is that updated? Is that right, Emily?
Yeah, I did it.
You're even better than Steve. Look at that. I'm seeing mine. I was just kidding. Steve is not with us today. So this is the first time we were talking about this since I think about episode maybe 6 or so, which would be like 9 years ago, maybe 10 years ago, that we are doing a video podcast episode without Steve running the back end. So Emily is very, very smart if you've ever watched the podcast before. So she is running everything behind the scenes, doing a great job already. So we're really excited. Make sure everyone give her a high five next time you see her. Thanks everyone for joining. We're really excited about this episode. We have our friend Jordan Donini back with us, who was actually with us in April of 2021. This is his second appearance on the podcast. And I think the conversation for that one was a little bit different than it'll be today. That was episode 76. I didn't say that.
76, yeah.
76. 115 today and 76 in 2021. So that means we're on a pretty good pace, right? We try to do one a month. So anyway, welcome everybody. Welcome, Jordan. Thanks so much for being here.
Absolutely. Happy to be here.
Yeah, welcome.
We have a lot to talk about. First of all, I want to just talk about the big, situation that's going on right now with Florida. We have this huge hurricane that right now is a Category 5 that is approaching Florida, and it really is doing so in a ridiculous trajectory. Like I've never seen, and I'm no expert in Florida hurricanes, like I'm sure Jordan you are because you live there, but this is a weird path that it's taking, right?
Yeah, I think it's hard to be a hurricane expert, especially these days, because
Right.
you really don't know what the heck they're going to do until right at the final hour, which is the scariest part. But
That's a really good point.
Yeah.
I should have said historian. I'm not a hurricane historian because I can't remember all the details, I'm sure, as much as someone who lives in Florida. But yeah.
I've been through my share. I can at least remember 5 major ones that I've been through since I was, aware of what was going on. So, but yeah, thankfully we down here where my house is in Collier County, we just were moved out of the cone. So right now we're not at risk of direct landfall, but the lovely, what they call the dirty side, which is the spin side that churns up the water and brings the storm surge, is still going to hit us because it's got a pretty sizable wind field, not as big as the last one that hit, which was Helene. Yeah, Helene was the last one that hit. It's not looking great for the counties north of us, including where a lot of our common friends do their work and things like that. So we're thinking about them and just hopeful that we have some good results once it passes through. It keeps slowing down too. It's supposed to hit Wednesday now. We're not going to get to like Thursday morning, which is lovely. Thankfully, it's going to be like a Cat 3 is what they predict when it actually makes landfall. But I mean, you could have a Cat 1 that could still bring terrible storm surge depending where it impacts. So, still worrisome.
That's so scary. And, you'll notice we're not always good about getting the posts up on the Turtle Room's social media accounts to say, hey, we're going to have a podcast. But we had some changes last minute. I asked Jordan late again. So I asked him, was it late last week, if you join us? And I think I vaguely remember doing that to you in 2021 as well. But you're so wonderful and game. But also then I wasn't sure over this weekend, and I wanted to reach out to you to just see like, hey, is this still okay? And to my it's pleasant surprise, you said yes. And I think like you have to ask questions like, should we get on and do this? I mean, people have more important things to worry about, but I don't know about anyone else on here, but for me, like the most terrible points in my life, I wanted to lean into what I enjoy even more because it's kind of helps me a little bit. So we're here, and anyone who's listening to this, who it will be dealing with this horrible storm or has loved ones or friends that are dealing with this, our thoughts and prayers go out to you, and I wish you nothing but the best and lots of luck in this moment. So thanks everyone for being here despite that, and thanks Jordan for being here despite that. Steve was saying too, he's like, Jordan might have to prepare, and then when I reached out, you're like, well, we're just kind of sitting around and waiting. So
Yeah,
maybe it's a good
waiting game.
opportunity.
I cleaned up the yard this weekend, got all the projectiles put away. I've got literally tubs for all of my critters in my office right now. So, but I'm not going to pull them in until a little later tomorrow, so I can make sure that I don't have a room that completely reeks of turtle feces.
We
We all know that
understand.
smell.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, we sure do.
You know the smell, and my wife is specifically very thankful that I'm waiting. So
Yeah, I've sat in cars that smelled like that. Actually, Emily, you and I have together actually sat in cars that smelled like that
Yep.
for more than a few hours. It's a special smell that happens when the animals get freaked out by being moved and not understanding why. Yeah.
yep,
Yeah, the stress poops, they smell the worst.
they're the worst.
Thanks. Andrew says, "Nice hat, Jordan," and says that I need one, and then says, "Emily, what's up?" I think
Yeah.
Andrew is commenting on my baldness, but that's okay. It's okay. My forehead's not that shiny right now, so I'm cool with it. As long as it's not like so shiny that when I do this for work, I have a blurred background, kind of actually like a background like Jordan has. Actually, it's not necessarily blurred, but like one that goes up, and it always struggles like yours is right now a little bit with the headphones. And then for me, I always have a shiny spot on my forehead that makes it look like my head is dented. And I'm on like these important work calls, and I'm always like, I look like I have the most misshapen head of all time. Okay. Anyway, Emily, were you about to say something when I really kept talking?
Oh, no, I was just going to say we have a tendency, Jordan, just so you know, is if there's anyone bald on, apparently we point it out.
Oh,
So,
fair enough.
yeah,
I'm
that's
not
our
there
thing
yet.
now.
I'm not there yet, thankfully. So I still got some time. I still got
It's our new thing. I don't know.
So
That looks good.
Yeah.
That is weird, isn't it? Why do we do that?
I don't know.
So there are a lot of podcasts that talk about the weather
yeah.
all the time, and I always Let's Talk Turtles is one of those, and I always give Ryan a hard time about that. There's something about it, like that question. Tell us about how you got into reptiles, or the just talking about the weather without. And I guess we just did both the baldness and the weather. So
Yeah, I think I've been on
hurricane.
I've been on Let's Talk Turtles twice, and I think the weather was one of the first things we got talking each
First
time.
thing, always first thing.
Which somewhat
Great
relevant.
intro.
It's just really fun to compare between like Ohio and Florida. I'm like, oh yeah, it's cold up there. Well, I still got field season to do, so because there's no off season down here.
Yeah, which is cool. Yeah, because you're comparing notes, and we are into the environment and animals. Yeah, ecosystems, all that good stuff. That's cool. The main reason I wanted to talk to you, I think it's okay to jump into it if that's okay, and Emily, if you're cool with it. But the main reason we wanted to talk to you tonight is Herpeton. So you just finished your second installment, your second edition of the Herpeton conference, which is, if I'm saying, it's like the South Florida reptile. Tell me more.
Yeah.
No?
So it's Herpeton, the South Florida Herpetology Conference, but now officially, we officially dropped the South, and we are calling it the Herpeton Florida Herpetology Conference as of the last day of the conference, because it's the only conference on herpetology in Florida anymore. There used to be another one up north in Gainesville that was the All Florida Herpetology Conference. It was like the first conference I ever attended, and it kind of went away even just prior to COVID, just because of it was it's hard to run a conference and financial responsibilities to get it going, and people just didn't have the time. So there was like limbo there for Florida. Didn't really have anything going on herpetology conference wise, and for whatever reason, I said, that was one of my favorite conferences. It was the first conference I ever went to, and I kind of want to revive that feeling, and started brewing this in like 2021, and last year 2023 was the first official conference we had hosted at my school, Florida Southwestern State College in Fort Myers. So first year we had 95 registrants, and I think all of them but 4 or 5 attended. This year we had 142 registrants.
Yes.
About 15 dropped out because of Hurricane Helene that was hitting North Florida. But we still ended up with like about 130 people attending, which was absolutely fantastic. And we got people from all over Florida, but we also got some Northerners visiting us from Kentucky and Minnesota as well, which is really cool. So we had a good combination of folks from several different disciplines within herpetology, which was really cool.
That's amazing. I think this is a great just American story of like living the dream, right? You
100%.
attended something you really liked, you grew up really liking something, you pursued it academically, you stuck with it, people like you, they gave you an opportunity to do something you wanted to do. I want to talk about that before we get into like, hey, it's tough to run a conference like this.
Yeah.
I want to talk about that whole piece around how do you set something like this up? Like it goes from idea to reality, and there's so much from that 2021, even from back when you went to the conference you were talking about, to then 2021, to then going and asking and then making it a reality. Can you take us through all of that?
So the reason I wanted a conference like this is because it was so welcoming to young up and comers and students, who some people that hadn't even like been in the field at all. That was me at that conference. Like I was a reptile lover and I had kept reptiles, but I hadn't really started doing any science yet. So my undergraduate professor, Phil Allman, was the one that took us to the Florida Herpetology Conference as part of our reptile amphibian evolution class. And when I got there, I was just like, oh, this is just amazing. Like these are like people from books that like I've read, and they're here. Like the first conference I ever went to, freaking Peter Pritchard. So right. Peter Pritchard was at this conference. Lori Vitt, if folks are familiar, who was like one of the main lizard evolutionary biologists of all time, was the keynote speaker. And just being exposed to literal greatness, not to mention everybody from the UF Museum was there, like Harvey Lillywhite, Max Nickerson, like all of these great biologists like were right there. I'm like, I had no idea that this is what this was going to be. This is so cool. And the Florida Herpetology Conference was fantastic too, because we had guys from the captive and herpetoculture industry there as well. Like Mark Cantos was on a panel. They were talking about like the change in the turtle laws that happened in 2000. So they had Pritchard and Cantos and Jerry Johnson, all those guys kind of talking about the impacts of it, and had this open discussion panel. It was a really good combination of folks, and the feeling of that first conference was something that always kind of stuck to me. And like it's such a nostalgic piece that to be able to try to replicate that years later was just such a work of love to be able to do. And I'm just so thrilled I've been able to do it. But that was the motivator. Actually getting it going requires a lot of what I like to say is a naivete, because I don't think you really know what you're in for until you start planning it. But I basically broached the idea once my department recognized, okay, this guy's like pretty good. He does a lot of good research. He's reliable. He doesn't waste his grant money on stuff. Like he when he puts his mind to something, he does it. And they were like, okay, let's do this. So we got an internal grant to kind of start things up for the first year. I had a lot of help from 2 folks in our division called Team Aspire, which is Joseph Van Galen and Jessica Godwin. They kind of handle like our grants and also like assessing our learning outcomes and things like that to other science nerds. So they helped me get it off the ground. The first year, slightly smaller, but super successful. I would say for a first year conference, I have almost 100 people, mostly comprised of South Florida people, pretty solid. And then that set the tone for the future. The next year after that, my own department, the Department of Pure and Applied Sciences, hey, we want to help sponsor you through this, because this is great for our school to get this recognition as being
totally
this sort of research mecca for herpetology. We want that, and the community obviously responded to it, so let's keep this going. So I had a lot of help from my dean, Dr. Livy Schott, and the associate dean, who's my good buddy. Oh, there's Mick. I see Mick in the chat. Mick's one of my research collaborators and friends. She comes out and does
Awesome.
a lot of cool work with us. But Angus Cameron, who is the associate dean, is also my Costa Rica research buddy. So he does the mammal side of things when we're down in Costa Rica. But he's been a big help with that, and just having the full support of that, plus all of these sort of outside organizations like the Turtle Room. We also have the Santa Fe College group, who's been super supportive of us. Jerry Johnson and one of my best buds, Cody Godwin, helping out with things. Chris Lekowitz at Sanibel Captiva Conservation Foundation has been huge with helping rally the troops. And we had a huge turnout this year from the UF extension office in Fort Lauderdale, the Croc Docs over there, as well as the invasive species group, all brought a lot of folks. I think they brought like almost 30 people to the conference from just that group this year, which was incredible. So a lot of good support from outside groups has allowed this to be super successful. And it's a lot of work, but it is a true labor of love. And people who attended can attest, like I got super teary-eyed on the opening announcements just because
Aww.
of how much work went into it, and just see it be there in front of me happening. And I was like, God, starting to get teary-eyed. Not to mention all the stress of trying to keep this thing going when a major hurricane was hitting the state at the same time. So that led to a bunch of extra emotions going on, of course. But it was the second year, I got so many comments like, we didn't know how you could improve on last year, but you did it somehow. Like, how did you make it better the next year? I was like, I don't know. I like to give a lot of credit to the attendees and the people that stepped up. Like, we didn't know if our keynote speaker was going to be able to make it, Dr. Bruce Means, because he was up in Tallahassee. Somehow, some way, he got down a day later, but he did a closing keynote instead. And then my good friend Sean Duty, who, if you're not familiar with his work, he's a fantastic researcher at USF St. Pete, does a lot of turtle as well as other reptile behavior work. He filled in for keynote and talked about his 30 years of work in Australia. And so we had this cool opening bookend of a fantastic speaker, closing with a fantastic speaker, and all of these great talks sandwiched in between. It just became a really cool conference. So I think that's kind of the format I want to go with from now on, is have like an opener and then a closer to finish things off. So, but we'll see how that goes as we continue planning in the future.
That's so wonderful. Yeah, I just want to go back. There's several things you said that spark follow-up questions and everything, but I just want to come back to one thing. You mentioned the panel that you saw with Dr. Pritchard and Dr. Johnson and Mark Cantos. Like, that's a group of people that you don't expect to see together, right? But that's also something that I think there are certain academics who I like to think of myself as somebody who's like a keeper who really cares about, the environment and the bigger picture and all of that. Right. And that's why I think what the Turtle Room does is so important. I don't have to go down that rabbit hole, but like, the idea of this more holistic approach to this, where like we try to reach out to those across the aisle, or who have a little bit different stake in this than we do individually, and try to find the common ground. And you're one of those people who's an academic who I think is a friend of our viewers, our listeners. And you mentioned Chris Lekowitz. That's someone who is more of an academic, more of like a government official who is a friend of this group, who's just out here to help and will do whatever it takes to help the animals, Can you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, I'll say, can I feel so? So the first year, one of the coolest things was we did have like enough people to actually have a mostly captive herpetoculture session. Didn't work out as much this year. We tried. We had a couple of kind of captive or pathogen-centered talks, but I would love to grow that, because that is kind of what All Florida did as well. It had that available, and there's a lot of cross-pollination that can occur with these things. Jeremy Thompson with the Canixes Cooperation, Canixes Cooperative, not corporation, talked at our first meeting. Obviously, he was up in the Panhandle, so he couldn't come down for this last one. But his talk sparked a lot of questions and a lot of discussion, and he ended up forming some great research relationships with other people there. And he's now doing a bunch of freshwater turtle sampling with some of these research groups. But he was presenting stuff on kinesies that he's learned from his captive work that we had no idea about stuff in the wild. And
Right.
that is a very important aspect when we can't study some of these animals in the wild because they're too cryptic or in isolated places and can't get to them. Captive research can really help fill in some of those gaps and actually allow us to devise and develop research action plans for those things. I think it's a very, very important part of captive propagation is that aspect, sharing that life history information that you collect. Ralph Till gave a great talk that year too on Egyptian tortoises. You know, he's the Egyptian tortoise god, so it was great for him just to kind of share how he's cared for and produced Egyptians for those number of years. But we're hopeful to have some more types of talks like that in the future, because again, like just knowing like effective clutch size for some of these animals would be super, super helpful. What's clutch frequency? That's stuff we can apply from captive environment to the wild, and I think the cross pollination there is just stands to benefit everybody.
Right. Yeah. And we get to stare at the animals, right? Like our friends who we had on at one point from Okinawa who are working with Geomyda japonica, they don't see the animals. They haven't seen the breed. They haven't seen eggs hatch yet. And like, we see that all the time. My animals, like anytime I put them together, I get to see them breed and what that looks like and everything. But see, this the fact that you understand that relationship, that, you know, that this can be part of a bigger collaboration. That's the future. That has to be the future,
right,
of, you know, all of this. We have to work together. We can't just say, oh, the people in, you know, the institutional folks who are in higher ed or the people who are in the zoos, they don't know or they don't want to work with us. Well, that's not necessarily the case.
No.
Some of them have been burned before and they don't want to have to deal with that again. And, you know, it's basically there are people like that on both sides and on all sides because there's more than two sides. Anyway.
Right. No, but yeah, that's the thing is there's a lot of broad brush painting and that leads to more divisiveness. I think a lot of us have a lot more in common than we lack. And I just think it just takes some actual bridge building and we could really do some great things. Now, of course, there's always going to be like, you know, extremists on either side of any part of the bridge, right? Where you get one, they're like, oh no, those academics, all they want to do is prevent us from keeping stuff, or oh, those keepers, all of them are poachers and they're all terrible people. You know, you get those extremist sort of broad brush painting ideas, and that, you know, obviously there are people that fall into both of those ends, but most people I think are more so in that middle ground, and I just think we just have to build those bridges a little bit and make some better connections, and I think it'll benefit the animals that we all love in the long run.
Yeah, it's easy to generalize when you're on the other side. Yes. So it's easy for somebody who's not a keeper to say, well, keepers, that's all the pet trade and that's all, you know, that's why turtles are endangered. Well, it's not all pet trade, and it's not all contributing to, you know, animals becoming more rare. But we have to understand on this side that is, you know, that is somewhat true, and we need to do everything we can to be better.
Exactly.
Be the change we want to see in the world.
Exactly. 100%. Yeah. And that's like a big thing that I often see. It's like, well, you know, poaching is obviously a serious and real concern. A lot of people try to downplay that, but then other people try to make it seem like that's the only concern when we've got things like habitat destruction,
especially in Florida.
Especially in Florida, where we are literally like the fastest developing state in the planet, or in the country. Maybe planet too, I don't know.
Maybe.
Close, yeah.
At least honorable mention, yeah.
Yes. Because, you know, our entire board of our wildlife commission is basically real estate developers, which is awesome to see, because we're one of the few states that doesn't have like a DNC. We don't have a Department of Natural Resources, right? We don't have a DNR. We have a commission, so it's all appointed. So you can see where that leads with a lot of the outcry with how they were going to try to develop a lot of our state parks a
Yes.
few months ago until they got
Oh, yeah.
found out. So
Mhm.
there's a lot of that going on, and that's I mean, obviously poaching I think is a huge issue, but I think development and irresponsible development
Yeah.
are probably bigger issues in Florida right now than the others.
That's so sad.
Yeah.
Yeah, we had a guest on a few months ago, Dr. Clemens, and he actually brought up something similar to what you're saying. He was just like, you know, he was promoting a lot of people who are wherever they are living locally to join their town commissions and town committees and sit on these chairs and be the ones promoting for conservation locally. Yeah. And it was just such an eye-opening statement for me personally, because I'm just like, there are so many different avenues you can take for the same ultimate goal of protecting turtles and saving them and
Right.
conservation and preservation, right? So
Right.
whether it's captive keeping for propagation, or if it's working in a zoo, in an institution where you're displaying them for educational purposes, or if you're in the field work learning about them, or if you're sitting on a town committee, right? There's so many different avenues. So this is reminding me a lot of the same conversation.
Yeah, no, I think that is the way that it is, and I would not be where I'm at without having access to captive animals and being able to see them in places and being able to grow up with pet reptiles. That just made my love grow. Now, does it mean I think we should be able to have any reptiles we want? No. There are some species nobody needs to be keeping, right? So I won't go down that route because I know that'll get a little spicy. But
Really spicy.
but I also don't agree with like what they call those. What are they? The whitelist bans, where basically they give you a list of what you can have and everything else you can't have. Like I think that is a really negative connotation. But there's some awesome folks in FWC that I think are really trying to build those bridges.
That's great to hear.
Some of the conversations that people are having, but I think the other side is still a little bit tenuous because they've been burned. FWC is obviously tenuous because they've been burned. Look, we are literally the invasive species capital on the planet. Majority of those introductions can be traced back to one wholesale dealer on the East Coast. We shall not name who they were. They are no longer in existence, thankfully. But so you can see why there's such trepidation on both sides. But there's
correct.
There is a lot we could do to help each other, and I just think it requires a lot more listening than arguing. And unfortunately, the internet age has caused everything to devolve into just he said, she said nonsense at times. So instead of us just talking to each other, because I feel like half the people are not going to say these vile things they say online to a person's face, right? We have
totally.
We have that that shield of a screen that we can. I can type so many bad things, but if you were actually sitting with this and realizing they're an actual person, right, there will be, I think, a lot more resolution. So that's my personal opinion on it.
That's a great point. Yeah. Can I bring up something? I'm going to just change gears a little bit. I'm still talking about Herpeton, but the photo that we used to let everyone know earlier today, hey, we're gonna have a Pondcast episode tonight. It was you and some other folks in the photo, and I'm just wondering if you could let us know why that photo.
Yeah, so that photo, because I think that was the only one I actually had of me from the conference. I had no time to ask. I think one of the photographers from the UF Extension office has some more photos. I could post those up once they get them to me. Our marketing team was supposed to come, but of course, they were all preparing for the hurricane because we didn't know if it was going to hit us at that point in time. But that particular photo taken was of myself and the 4 runner-ups or winners of student awards that we have, which is part of where the Turtle Room sponsorship ended up going, was directly to getting these students a little bit of cash prize with their wins, which was pretty cool. But yeah, so we had 4 young up-and-coming awesome students that gave either great talks or posters, and these ones were voted by a panel of judges to be the best or the top 2, which was pretty fantastic. Let's see if I can remember. We have Jasmine Kesselring, who won Best Talk. She's an undergrad at UCF. doing this awesome work on the snake lungworm. I can never remember, Rayatella orientalis, or RO infections. So she's been studying its spread across different species in the state, which is fantastic.
Wow.
She's actually been working with one of my undergrad students too, who got to do some cool stuff with their lab. And just a little shout out, they have this really cool organization run by the grad student Jenna Palmisano called SLAM, the Snake Lungworm Alliance for Monitoring. I think the abbreviation SLAM is the abbreviation. I can't remember what it is, but it's a great way for people potentially in the captive world to get involved, or just in the herper world to get involved with the science, reporting dead snakes, potentially collecting samples, and looking at how far this nasty worm is spreading. It's specifically of interest to turtle people because it's actually made the leap spillover, and it was found in a Galapagos tortoise. It potentially caused its mortality here in South Florida. So it's something that we should be concerned about. So definitely something. But that was Jasmine. She won best. Jessica Yates, grad student at UCF, got second place best talk. Talked about a lot of like community modeling of amphibian and reptile populations at UCF. Gave a great talk about the impacts of development on research, because UCF decided to bulldoze an entire wetland on their campus, where they were actively studying things. So that's always fun. But gave a fantastic talk. And then our best poster representing turtles, Selena Ceballos. She studied basically the proteomics, which is, a fancy word for like the expression of proteins, in red-eared sliders when they were exposed to red tide toxins, which is a big sort of
big
thing
deal
down here. So very cool to kind of model that in red-eared sliders. And it seems like red-eared sliders express different proteins when exposed to it compared to sea turtles. So there's some ideas there that could lead to a lot of thoughts on potential maybe treatments of red tide, along with other things, just from a genetics perspective, which was really cool. And then our final runner-up for posters was Juliet Rodriguez, and she studied white blood cell counts in amphibians when exposed to this nasty little disease called Perkinsia, which I think is a protozoal parasite. She was using Cuban tree frog as their model organism to look at how this infection potentially triggered their immune system. So literally 50-50 were undergrads. 2 were grad students, and 2 were undergrads, which was really fantastic to see. Such cool science coming from those folks. And I was like, it was 4 lovely young ladies. So seeing women in STEM is always a really cool thing. Being a girl dad myself, it was really cool to see them out there representing. So it was awesome.
That's absolutely incredible. And also setting them up with this very impactful, positive. If you don't have the foresight to give out awards, then you miss an opportunity to potentially provide them with a well-earned, incredible moment in their lives, in their professional lives, a first amazing, checkpoint in their growth that's going to potentially keep them doing this work, or tell them, hey, you're on the right path. The family members that said you're not studying the right thing. You should be a lawyer. You should be a whatever. Like you should be an accountant because you'll make more money. Like you're following something you love, and you're being, recognized and awarded for that. And if you don't make this conference, and if you don't have the wherewithal to give these awards, that doesn't happen. I think that is absolutely incredible.
It's fantastic. And even folks who didn't win awards, like we had another like couple honorable mentions who didn't win awards that we talked to. Just the mention of that, like I remember when I presented my first talk at TSA, and I didn't win an award. It was a sham, really. Just kidding. But specifically Peter Lindemann, who was like the map turtle god, came up to me afterwards, and he's like, hey, you didn't win, but I just want to let you know how good I thought your talk was. And just hearing that meant everything, coming from like a hero, right? So winning an award like that can be so fundamental and continuing some of these folks to push on with what they're doing. And I'm happy to be able to have that. So
that's amazing.
Yeah, and no one does it for the recognition, but it sure helps, right?
Yeah.
It sure helps.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah.
I think we need more awards and recognition and, and more speaking opportunities. And like the more that we get out and share, the better everyone is. I don't know, the better off everyone is, because I mean, not everyone is a wealth of information like you are. The way that you just rattled off all of that information, I don't think I could ever do that. I mean, yeah, you just ran the conference, but still, that's pretty awesome.
It just happened like last weekend, so come on.
But not only were those really like specific, like the information you were giving, but I felt like those are really important things.
Mm-hmm.
Like when you said the red tide, I'm like, are you kidding me? This is something as a guy in Connecticut, I've heard of a lot, and it's a real concern in the environment because of the way, Florida's been handled. Yeah. So it's not only important because it's happening and there's findings there, but it's important because it's like relevant on a big scale. And that's, I mean, that's amazing stuff. Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. No. And
so it was just this past weekend?
Yeah, it was not so sorry. It was like last Saturday and Sunday.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah. The weekend before this
not
one that
yesterday.
just passed. Yeah.
Got it. Okay. I was just like, wow, you bounced back quick. I heard there was post-conference stress, but
yeah, I wouldn't have been able to do this if it was last week.
Okay.
I was so tired.
Now you mentioned. Go ahead.
The first year I lost 7 pounds in 2 days.
Couldn't eat. You're too nervous.
I literally was running around. And this year, I think this is why I couldn't meet up with y'all when you came down for in the turtle van, as I just got Achilles surgery. So I was in a cast when y'all got in here, and I just got out of the boot the day before the conference, and then I ended up walking like 15 miles over 2 days back and forth in
so that can't be appropriate.
My foot was like a watermelon.
That can't be appropriate.
I'm okay.
Oh my gosh.
No re-tear. So yeah, we're good now though. A week of recuperation was nice.
Before we went live, we were chatting a little bit about timing, that you thought maybe next year you might move the timing of the conference. Is that like news? Can we talk about that openly?
It's not officially official, but I sent a poll out to attendees and I got about 30% response, which, whatever.
That's good.
Sounds like my students. Yeah. but anyways, almost far and away, folks are cool with moving it out of hurricane season. So who would have thought? But we're thinking. The big thing is there's a lot of other niche conferences we don't want to compete against, right? And pull people away from, because we know TTPG is in November, right? But it's usually mid or late November. Also, the Gopher Tortoise Council is second week of November. So we're thinking maybe literally the first weekend in November, because that gets us out of the biggest hurricane season. We're still technically in it, but it gets us out of that just for planning details. At least this year, probably switching to November, and then maybe going January the year after that. But a lot of people are like, no, you can't move it to January. We don't have to wait too long if you move it to January. So I was like, okay, so maybe we'll just slowly push it to January, go November, then January after that.
If it moves around, then people don't know when it is, and they just try to figure out what the date is. What is the date?
And there's some potential to move the site a little bit around too. We've got some offers to host it in different areas of Florida potentially, which would be kind of cool. This year we were supposed to have a field trip where people got to check some aquatic traps and things like that, but didn't happen because of the hurricane. The year before that, I set a bunch of traps in urban canals, and people got to come out and help me mark and tag a bunch of freshwater turtles we caught. We caught a weird graptomes in South Florida last year, which is kind of wild and cool. Wachatensis, biggest male Wachatensis I've ever seen.
Oh, big male! Wow.
It was a male that was the size of a standard female. I was like,
wow, that's amazing.
Yeah, so that was really cool. But yeah, so if we were to move it around, we could open up some other field trip opportunities, and that can also be a driver for herpers, is to get them down here and see what they're all up to.
Yeah. That's really cool. You kind of touched on something. You mentioned not wanting to compete with the other conferences for folks. So are you it's open to all? And I guess the other question with that too is because I think I know the answer, but how large can this get? Because it seems like it's pretty broad. I mean, like, right, reptiles and amphibians in general is a very broad subject that you could end up growing kind of large.
Yeah, we were getting pretty close to capacity this year.
Right.
I think the room could hold about 100. The room could have held about 150 people, so we were right at the cusp of that. I had to deactivate registration just in case and have it as a private thing, just in case for folks.
Wow.
But if it continues to grow, we'll have to take the venue off site and go to places that can hold more people, which should be totally fine to do, and be good to go there. So the idea is to hope. Oh yeah, that's right. We had two of the Turtle Room Colonia cast boys down there representing. We had Wyatt and Jack hanging out representing the Turtle Room down there. It was great I met Wyatt, I think, for the first time at TSA last year this summer, and I've met Jack a couple times before that. But it was cool to have them down there.
They're so awesome.
Yeah, they're good guys.
Another example, right, of the next generation. Like, we're in good hands. There's people there's smart kids who want to make the world a better place.
And it's so cool talking to those folks. It's like how much smarter kids are than I was at that age.
I know,
right?
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Man. But then I'm like, oh, that's also because of people like me. I'm gonna take a little credit for it too, right?
I like that.
I got talking with Jerry Johnson. He's like, yeah, that's our job, right? It's to give them access to things that we didn't have to make them.
Yeah.
Like, you're right. I'm going to take all the credits because of us. You're right.
I love that. That's so great. Right. Yeah, and hopefully the next generation after them is even better off because
exactly.
They're going to see what other. Yeah, that's amazing.
100%.
It's scary in a good way.
Yeah.
Scary in a cool way.
I love seeing what those folks are all getting up to, and I got to hang out with them all up in Arizona this year too. So it made me feel young, but also old because I was trying to keep up with them as we were out there herping on a bum.
You don't know the half of it, buddy. I just finished writing. I was going to say I want to go next year to your conference and I want to speak at it. But
yes, please.
No pressure. But
you have a permanent spot because we want to have a captive and education type of session. So whatever of those topics you prefer to talk on, we can give you like a plenary sort of 30-minute like talk just to kick things off. Like seriously.
This is like when you ask if your friend can stay over, ask your mom, but your friend is standing right there. It's like, because everyone's watching now, you have to be like, oh yeah, that'd be great, Anthony. It's okay. You can tell me later if it's not cool.
No, please.
The reason I was bringing that up, it was kind of in my back pocket, but you mentioned Wyatt and Jack and keeping you young and everything. I just finished writing a book, my 5th book, which is crazy because my 4th book hasn't technically come out yet. I know, I'm like freaking out. It's like I can't believe my life.
Absolute machine over here.
I know. I don't know. Just when the ideas are there, it's easy sometimes. But this one is called The Great American Turtle Chase. And it's about my cross-country trip from Jacksonville to Los Angeles, and we did a podcast episode on that. But anyway, we saw Dr. Johnson and Kim and Jack all out in the field, but then we went to Ichetuckney Springs, and I was like trying not to drown the whole time. You talk about like trying to keep up with the young guys. They were like fish in water, and I was like, I don't know, a drowning rhino that was in water too deep for too long. It was bad. I'm trying to think of an animal that's like not known for its amazing swim. I couldn't say like a drowning hippo because hippos swim really well.
A gopher tortoise. You were just kind of vibing in the water.
It was, yeah. Like eventually it's going to get ugly, but hopefully it doesn't last that long. But then it did. So yeah, trying to keep up with them in their element, and I'm like all old and out of shape, and it was. Yeah. It was bad. It was really bad.
I feel that, man. Like I used to be able to hold my breath and dive, 20 feet down on a breath and pick a turtle off the bottom of a thing. I went March 2022, I think I went out there and surveyed with them the Santa Fe River Turtle Project, and I was like, oh, I don't got it anymore, guys.
Right?
I don't got it. My time is passing by.
It just happens. It's like it happens over time, but one day you just go for a check-in. Like, I know what I can do. Like, no, you can't. No, you can't.
I feel like it happens overnight. No, it's certainly overnight. Yeah.
Yeah.
It really did. Like, yeah.
It's what it feels like. But I don't know. What do I know? Do I look like I know? Do I look like I have this figured out? Heck no.
You've written 5 books, so I mean,
You know something, yeah.
No. I encourage everyone, write your book. I told, and I think I may have mentioned this on the podcast before, but last year at the TTPG conference, I told Bob Kraus, like, you did it. You wrote your memoir. Every single one of us who dedicates their lives to these animals and spends this huge significant chunk, whether you're an academic or you're a keeper, an official keeper like Emily at Riverside Reptiles, or you're a hobbyist or whatever word you want to use. I don't like the term hobby because I think it's more than that. It's more important than that. But regardless of what you do, you can write your memoir about this stuff, because there's all sorts of interesting things that we discover along the way, and people who are interested in the same thing. So, don't feel like, oh, nobody wants to hear my story. They do. And like Bob is an example. He did really cool stuff, but his story is different than anyone else's. Someone else, you do really cool stuff. It just happens to be a little different. That's all.
Jordan, he's trying to tell you to write a book. I don't know if you're.
Yes. Oh my God. Yes.
Subtle,
It is in the thoughts. There is
yes.
There is a mental draft. So, but I'm looking at my board here. I've got 6 manuscripts I got to get out first. So
that's it.
Oh, wow.
6 are in the work right now. So
that's nothing.
Yeah.
That's nothing.
Yeah.
But that's the next thing I start thinking about, is like, how do you like diversify the work that you're putting out there too? Because like, if you're at a job for 10 years, is that better than being at a job for 7 years? Like at some point, like, where's the point where like you have to move to something different? So you're in manuscripts now, but eventually you got to write that book, because you can.
Exactly. Right? Yep. Yeah. I'll wait till when I earn my sabbatical. That's when I'll do the book. Is when I earn my sabbatical. So then I'll.
And you'll definitely earn it too. Yeah.
So.
Can you tell us about your 6 manuscripts?
Oh, sure. Let's see.
Nothing that anyone can steal.
Right, of course. Well, they would have a hard time stealing any of your stuff.
Okay, good. Okay, good.
So I should say, Mick Corey, who was in the chat earlier, her and I co-authored a big publication along with some of my students on our long-term coastal box turtle research, looking at our radiotelemetry and looking at their habitat use, which was super awesome. And I have a paper that actually was supposed to come out before that one, but it got hung up in limbo, just looking at Florida box turtle home ranges in sort of a contained area, this sort of fenced in preservation land. It's like a gopher tortoise mitigation site. So they put it in to keep the gopher tortoises from getting out, and the box turtles were just trapped in there secondarily. So there's a small little population of box turtles, and just looking at how that site is different than this free range open site is kind of interesting, and it has some implications for relocation later on down the road, which is pretty interesting.
Any implications there, Jordan, for genetic diversity?
Very likely. We haven't done genetics, but I've got like a bunch of genetic samples sitting in a freezer. So whenever we have the money to actually run the genetics, I would love to see what's going on. The good thing is, like, reptiles, at least the ones that I've always read about, like, seem to not be so heavily influenced by inbreeding compared to like mammals. At least it takes them longer to be influenced by inbreeding. But then to add on to that one, I have one student that was an engineer, or an engineering major. And he was like, it takes you a long time to get those GPS loggers off of the turtles and to upload the information. What if I made a harness that we glued to the shell, and then that would allow us just to slide the actual tag in and out to upload the data? So I bought a 3D printer with our grant money. He developed this thing himself and built it, and that's the same model they're using on the radiated tortoises over there with TSA in Madagascar. That was my student's model, his design for the thing. So yeah.
Okay, can I just say something that is so cool? I'm getting like chills as you say that.
Yeah, so cool?
That is the benefit, right? So if you're out there and you're like, I see Chris Drake in the chat, right? Who is a dear friend and awesome guy. Chris Drake is a what's the word? Electrician. Right? So like, people have skills that can really help animals, and do, I think. But I think for a lot of us, we think, wow, I've always loved these animals, but for whatever reason, when I was like that high school age, when I was deciding what I was going to do for the rest of my life at 16, 17 years old, I didn't pick a program like Jordan's. I wish I did. I wish you were my professor. Wouldn't that be amazing? But I didn't. And here I am, for me, I became a social worker and and then found my way into veterinary medicine. But like, you know, if you're that person who has a different set of skills, that's okay.
Yeah.
Because you still bring something important to the table. I think that's really cool.
Mhm.
How did this engineering student end up in your class?
He was just gung ho to get experience doing research, and I was like, hey, you know, we do turtle research, sign up for my class. And he signed up for the class. He's an awesome guy. Jeff Haney is his name. Awesome dude, just a great guy. I don't want to call him a kid because he's, you know, non-traditional student. He's like, you know, 26, 27 years old, so a little older than your traditional student. And he just, you know, was working on an environmental engineering degree, wanted some experience doing stuff in the actual environment. And then it turned into this. And the only thing that's holding this paper from being submitted is my dumbass didn't take a picture, a good picture of the harness on a turtle. They're all like terrible, like selfies in the hand. So I have to just go catch a turtle at some point, glue this thing on it, and take a good profile picture of it showing it on the turtle.
You can't ask your friends in Madagascar for a picture of one on a turtle?
Well, they modified it to fit their turtles. So ours was a slightly different design, but they used ours as inspiration for that one. So a little different, and we want to show
That's
it on
super
the
cool,
specifically, which is cool. And then we found our box turtles are eating an invasive plant down here as like a major portion of their diet. We had students publish a diet study. They're eating this thing called beach cabbage or beach napuka. It's a Indo-Pacific answer to the they call it the beach half-flower, which is a native species we have here. They also call it inkberry. And this stuff grows at like 10-to-1 ratios to the native plant at the site we have. So the box turtles are eating it, plus it fruits all year. So they're like, oh, this is awesome. And they're pooping out sometimes 20 or 30 seeds in a single fecal sample. So it's like, well, are these box turtles actually helping to facilitate the dispersal of an invasive species? So I had a student grow them to see whether they could germinate post defecation and whatnot. So that one we just got invited to submit to a special edition of Frontiers on invasive species, which is pretty big. Which came directly from connections we made at Herpeton last weekend, which is super cool. So
wow. And that's absolutely amazing.
I could keep going on. If you want the last three, I can give them to you briefly if you want. So
yeah, go ahead.
The one I'm super most proud of is we did the super collaborative effort with FWC, with Kim Titterington with Swamp Girl Wildlife Rehab, and myself and a local organization that owns property nearby called Naples Botanical Garden, where we actually reintroduced some poached turtles from Southwest Florida, and we slapped radio tags on them. These were striped mud turtles and Florida mud turtles that were part of, I guess, multiple poaching busts. They didn't tell us like which poaching bust they came from. Obviously, there's legal loopholes in there, but they're like, hey, you want some turtles to follow? I was like, I can't say no to turtles. So we released these turtles and monitored them for about 9 months before their radio tags ended up giving out, and looked at their survivorship in home ranges, and turns out that striped mud turtles are really adaptable. They can be chucked anywhere post-release, which is great. Florida mud turtles, not so much.
Interesting.
Yeah. They're it didn't help that Hurricane Ian hit during the middle of the study for the Florida mud turtles. The striped muds gave, excuse me for the S-bomb, they gave zero shits about storm surge. They were fine. They're like, whatever. But the Florida muds seem to have some problems. So that's some really important conservation information for what we can do with some of these poached turtles post compensation.
What's great about that, what comes to mind, is the fact that the striped mud turtle, for whatever reason, it seems to be the species that keeps getting all of these poachers caught up in Florida. Like people keep exploiting this species, and in large numbers too. You know, maybe because they can trap a lot or something.
You can trap so many. Like one site we trap at, we set 8 traps, and we caught 130 turtles.
Wow, that's incredible. Yeah, and they're just like attracted to the traps, and they just can't say no. You know, so I mean, the fact that they can be released is wonderful.
Yeah.
It's just a matter of knowing where they came from once you have them in hand.
They were able to find that out. They knew they were Southwest Florida turtles. That's all they could tell us, is because again, there's South Florida's like been friggin' ground zero for like poaching busts the last like 5 years, it seems. So they just thought, hey, we know they're from the Southwest Gulf Coast, so they can be released in this area. So we just identified good habitat and followed them around for a year, which was pretty cool.
That's amazing.
And then I've got a student who's doing white blood cell counts on wild box turtles, just because there's no information on Florida box turtles in the literature. It's all eastern box turtles, so we don't even know what their general like white blood cell parameters are and their general total proteins, vet stuff you like, PCV, stuff like that. It's not been published on Florida box turtles in a wild setting. So we're just going to publish a little write-up on, hey, these are what their parameters were from wild specimens that we took blood samples from. Nice simple little paper, but super
That's great. Yeah, super useful. Yeah, to set that baseline.
Yeah, and the coolest one, well, I mean, there's all these are so cool, but one of the coolest ones is we slapped satellite transmitters on diamondback terrapins spring and summer 2023. We slapped 5 satellite transmitters on diamondback terrapins here in South Florida, and we're able to watch like real time movements for the most part of where these things were going. And now we've identified nesting habitat where these animals are going, and the distance these suckers travel was just mind blowing. Talking like round trips back and forth, because they had super sort of, what's the word, high nest site fidelity, so high site fidelity, super fidelity. Like they would go to what we presume was a nesting site and come back, and then like 7 days later they'd go back, and some of these are having like 140 kilometer total travels that we're documenting.
Okay.
Which for a diamondback terrapin, you would not think they're traveling that far, but they are. It's so cool.
Wow.
Yeah. So.
And are these ornates at that part of Florida?
It depends on who you talk to, my friend. So the answer is yes, but also no.
I understand.
So the most recent genetic information that's come out shows that actually mangrove terrapins, their genetic signature goes up to just south of Tampa Bay.
What? All the way up there? Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
So these are different looking rhizophorum and not macrospilota.
But they can have ornate characteristics.
Right.
But genetically, they match more with the rhizophorum group than they do the macrospilota.
But I mean, look, their range, I mean, there may be spots where they're not found as much, but like their range goes along the entire coast. So there has to be clinal variation.
Right.
Like when you take little pieces from here or there, oh, this is different. We're going to call it Tequesta or whatever.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So, but it's, pretty cool stuff to see either way.
Interesting. Wow.
Yeah, so
very cool.
Big things. And then
what should people know? Sorry, Jordan. I just
go you, man.
What should people know that are thinking about potentially attending the conference? Like, how do you sign up and all of that stuff? I know that we're early now because it just happened a couple of days ago, really. But
we have a website. The website is still open. I can, I think y'all might have the link, but I can certainly send it to you if you want to post it up just to see what the website looks like. It's still technically open for registration, but obviously it's not happening anymore because it's already happened. But I will, here I have the link. I'll just put it in the private chat to you so you have it. But you can see like the initial abstracts and what talks were going to happen. Obviously some of those changed with the storm and whatnot, but that is the link there where registration can happen. It is literally open to anybody, assuming you're not registering late. That was the biggest thing, is I had like 40 people register late. And I was like, okay, I gotta curtail the late registrants a little bit, but
that's usually my story too. So how early do you want people to register? Not like the last month, or
we will open this site up probably. We usually do it in April or May, but if we're bumping it to November, we'll probably do it like June, July-ish this year. Open up for at least abstract and talk submissions. And we are looking for a diversity of talks. Like, we want invasive species talks. We had a whole sea turtle session, and sea turtle people often get made fun of because they deserve it, but also because they're often associated as herpetologists, but they are herpetologists. They may not even know they're herpetologists, but they're herpetologists. So we wanted them to be included because there's a lot of information that can flow between freshwater turtle and sea turtle world. Like TSA, their keynote speaker was Jeff Siminoff, who is a sea turtle biologist, first and foremost, right? So it's good to see that integration again. Crossing bridges, building bridges together, and having that. So we had sea turtles, we had a reproductive ecology session on multiple species, we had disease, and of course we really want a herpetoculture session. I really want this a full herpetoculture session. We had an awesome speaker, Erin Rickman, I believe is her name. She just moved over here from literally across the pond, teaching at Eckerd College, and she studies like captive husbandry and its impacts on cognition of reptiles, which is really cool. Looking at should we just keep the snake in a shoebox? Is that a good thing? Or should there be enrichment and availability of certain things, right? So very cool information out there for not only, us academic science nerds, but also herp keepers. But I'd really love more people to present on overall, like, this is the species I've been keeping and this is how I keep it. This allows me to produce this many eggs, so on and so forth, because that's important information. Understanding that stuff would be so useful for a number of people, especially if they're species of somewhat relative, conservation concern, whether, they are restricted or if they're just something that is declining in their native range. That is good information to disseminate.
Absolutely. So how many speakers do you need to make a husbandry session?
Usually 4 or 5 is about all we need.
Just saying, everybody in the chat, if you're in Florida or interested in maybe attending this conference, maybe it's worth reaching out to Jordan. I think, we have our first meeting for the Connecticut Turtle Society this coming weekend, which is so exciting. It's something I wanted to do. Look at that. Represent.
Nice.
It's something I wanted to do for 20 years. So I think if you have a little bit of critical mass, just a couple people, then you start to feel like, maybe we can do this. But if time is coming near and you have no one, then it's like, all right, well, maybe we don't have that session this year. So you could be a person, just like Jordan said, if I build it, they will come. Yeah. You can be a part of building this husbandry session if you think you have something that you can present on. So I don't know. I think I want to be involved next year, Jordan.
Do it. And if you got friends that want to come down too, let's run it.
I think we could do that. I think we can make it happen. I'm just saying. Cool. Yeah. When I see questions in the chat here, Kevin Evans, as we work to wrap up, Kevin Evans wanted to ask about the nesting site fidelity for those Diamondbacks. Mm-hmm. Can you see that in the chat, or do you want me to read it to you?
Yeah,
well, I can read it I could read it just because people will be listening to this in only audio form at some point. Yeah. Surmising that they're returning to their own hatching site to then be bred again. Look at you, Emily. Work in the chat. You go, girl. Right on screen. Wow.
Nice. That's a great question. I don't know that we have the answer to that. I don't know that they are necessarily returning to their own nesting sites, like where they hatch, like a sea turtle would home. But we do think that most turtle species do have some degree of that home site fidelity from where they're hatched. But these ones are weird in that they're kind of like hitting multiple areas according to the satellite, so they're not just going back to the same exact spot every time. So there could be a number of potential places where they hatched, but it does give us information and kind of confirming the multiple clutching in these turtles. Most likely, like I documented at least double clutches in our South Florida terrapins, with potential for up to 3 or more, according to the reproductive data I've collected. And some of these animals are taking 3 or 4 consecutive trips back and forth to these spots, which I think does indicate that they're nesting multiple times. And it seems like they're literally not putting all their eggs in one basket and finding slightly different sections of the beach to nest on.
Sam, if you're still there, tell us what abstract you're talking about, and I'll skip right now to Michael Skipstead's question about Rhinoclemys annulata. And he wants to know if anyone's looked at the variation in terms of leg striping in that species.
Across Costa Rica specifically, because Michael and I had a good chat about Rhinoclemys.
I figured
they're kind of cut off in. Yeah.
If you didn't have a chat, if you didn't have a chat about this would have been a very weird question. I just want to say that.
Yeah.
Love you, Michael.
So Michael, to my knowledge, nobody's looked at that specifically, but I did have some good chats with John Carr about just documenting physical features of Rhinoclemnes annulata for comparative photos across their range. But specifically, leg striping is not necessarily something that I have specifically went to look at, but certainly could be something of interest, especially when you see kind of how broadly spread Rhinoclemnes annulata is across Central America and even Costa Rica in general. I think Michael said he found them in a spot where they hadn't even been previously documented when he was down there, which is pretty freaking cool. We officially have 6 radio tagged Rhinoclemnes annulata down in Costa Rica now too, which our squad down there is tracking. So which is almost tied for the biggest radio telemetry data set ever for the species. So
it's so cool too. We talk about the turtle nerddom, like, and then sea turtles, like the sexy species that everybody knows about and cares about. Like, I don't know that there are many turtles. We're talking about striped mud turtles and Florida mud turtles and Rhinoclemnes annulata. Like, these are species that are really poorly known because they're just like a little brown turtle. I mean, not that annulata is as small as mud turtles, but still, like, it's not a species that a lot of people know or care about. So the fact that you guys are talking about this is exciting for me to be here as kind of an onlooker and hear those conversations happening.
Yeah, well, Michael, if you ever want to collaborate on some of that stuff, feel free to let me know. We'll be back down this summer doing some work. So and definitely would be interesting to look at in captivity. I don't know if a lot of people keep annulata, honestly.
I saw some on our little. We saw some, Emily, on our little van trip in August.
Okay, yeah, I know there were some people in Florida that had them, but I don't know much more than that.
I remember when some came in. I wanted to work with them, but go ahead, Emily.
Cool.
Oh, no, I'm sorry. I just was going to say that Sam got back to you on the abstract that he was interested in on the lady from across the pond who studies on keeping animals and enrichment, etc.
Yeah. So that abstract is actually, if you click schedule on the website link, all the abstracts are in the schedule. So you can look and see them there, all 40 something of them or 60 something counting the talks. So the abstracts are all there and they'll be categorized and put into a proceedings in the next couple of months too. So
that's amazing. Very cool.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I just want to, so I think this is a good time to just kind of move towards wrapping up. Sure. I just want to say, Jordan, I am such a fan of yours. I can't even tell you. I was fanboying over you when I first met you, and then when we had you on in 2021. I'm going to, whether you want me to or not. I just, the world needs more people like you, my friend, and
do my best.
And I feel like when I say my friend, like it actually means something. Like you really are.
I feel like even though we've never met in person, we are friends though. So
it's going to happen.
Yeah.
It's going to happen. It'll happen soon. Next year. Here we go. We were close, right? We almost met in August, but it'll happen. But yeah, I thank you so much. The world is a better place because you're in it. And if you're somebody out there who's wondering who you should model, your efforts, your academic efforts, or whatever, your collaboration across the aisle efforts or whatever, after, it should be somebody like Jordan. So I just thank you for everything you do and who you are. And I look forward to seeing everything that you accomplish in the coming years. And I just can't wait for it.
Can I give a quick shout out just to all of our sponsors
Please.
For the Herpeton conference?
Of course.
Again, we had so many awesome people support. Of course, number one goes to our primary sponsor, the Turtle Room, who facilitated so much. Fantastic. After that, of course, Sanibel Captiva Conservation Foundation. Please keep them in your thoughts and prayers, and also maybe in your wallets for donations as the storm passes by. They're going to need all the support you can get with SCCF. We also want to thank ZooMed, who sponsored us this year. We have a local ZooMed rep in Cape Coral who sponsored us, as well as the Southeastern Partners in Amphibian and Reptile Conservation, or CPARC. And lastly, but certainly not least, Shelled Friends, our good friend Michael T. Supported, came in. He not only provided sponsorship, he donated that sponsorship to Kim Titterington so she could host a table and sell wares to support her rehab at Swamp Girl Rehab, which is so cool. And then he donated a registration for a student as well. So yeah, big shout outs to those folks and our local Cape Coral Friends of Wildlife as well. So big shout out to those folks.
That's amazing. Thank you for that, Jordan. I love that. What a great way to end too.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I'll just say the same thing I said about you goes for Michael Bathubaswamy as well. Just there are just, politics, it's, the election is next month, and social media, there's so much negativity in the world. And then you have conversations like this, and there's so much good in the world. We just, because we're drawn to negativity, negativity sells, people know that, and that's what gets put out there and what gets, blown up sort of on these platforms and everything. But my goodness, there's so much good in the world, so many good people doing amazing things, and you're a great testament to that. So thank you.
Yeah.
Well, I appreciate it. Thank you all for having me on. I'm happy to be here.
Yeah, until next time. See you guys next month. Appreciate y'all.
Nope, hang on. Steve's gonna kill us if we don't give a plug for the calendar.
Oh, I totally forgot, Emily. You should have used the chat. If you yell at me, you got to yell at me.
Well, there's two things here. He left a note for me, so it's either this one.
Let's do them both.
Or
that looks good. That looks good.
Right, we've got the calendar. It's available now, so please get it.
Steve.
But there's two things he told me to put up, so I don't know how this works. I'm just gonna hit
Try it
both.
again.
Oh,
QR code, but it's behind the live thing, so nobody's gonna be able to use it.
So,
At least, unless they see a different version that we do. But yeah, check out the 2025 calendar. It's really good this year. It's been good since the beginning. I think
it picks up. The QR code picks up. By the way,
it does. Okay, cool. Awesome,
okay.
awesome.
Whew.
Awesome.
Okay.
Yeah, I guess this is year 12 for our calendar. So we've been going strong for 12 years. I've
got mine from last year right here on my desk.
Let's go.
I
love it. Turtle, so.
We have a different partner every year, so we try to spread the love around, and it's a good one this year. So please, if you're thinking about next year and what desk calendar you're going to use in your office or whatever, this is the one for you. Just saying. Thanks, Emily. I was totally going to forget. Okay.
That's all right.
Can I say goodbye now?
So disappointed.
Yeah.
Steve deserves a better friend than me. Can we be honest? A better partner for sure, and definitely a better friend. Okay.
All right.
Thank you,
Thanks,
everybody.
guys.
Get your calendars.